Hey guys. Oh, too loud? Good, good, excellent. Hey, thank you all for coming tonight, and I hope you had a good chance to network with your fellow Xooglers. I'm Matt. I'm one of the emerging companies attorneys here, and I help advise companies really for everything as a general outside counsel. And when I'm not doing that, I mentor companies at Techstars, where I mentor them on basically that and everything else. For those of you a little less familiar with the law firm you're in, Pillsbury, we are a gigantic international law firm with one of the top startup practices in the country, now and historically. Decades ago, we actually helped form a company called Intel, if you've heard of it. Yeah, they're still around. They're still going. But anyway, in addition to our startup practice, we have the full range of services here. Everything all the way from trust and estates to crypto, cybersecurity, defense. We've got it all. So we can take your company and form it and advise you in the beginning, and also support you while you grow into a large, mature company. Anyway, so thank you all for coming tonight. And with that, let's get started.
But with that, I want to introduce the panel, and we'll start with John. And each person will give you just a preview of their career path, and talk about your stories. We'll kick off the conversation.
Great. Hello, everyone can hear me? Cool. So as introduced, I'm John. So I am not a Xoogler, I'm a ex-Meta. So my path actually for career, I actually started off in education, was where I originally started off. I started off as a K-8 teacher in San Francisco for a private school. And then over a series of different changes and events, I found myself at Meta. I found myself at Facebook as a contractor. I started off in project coordination, project management in the HR organization for operations. And then during my tenure there, I started learning a lot about privacy and data security, dealing with the outfall of CA, Cambridge Analytica, in the HR side, or like the internal side. And then also starting to deal with GDPR regulations with the EU, and then also with all the FTC audits that came out after as well. So we had a lot of fun times dealing with compliance with all of our partnerships and companies. And then after a lot of that major work and we got things running in that program, I shifted over into doing contingent workforce as a program manager and a portfolio manager for all the different projects and portfolios of the different work that we did. And then I was hit by the layoffs, or graduated, as I think Adam was mentioning, graduated from Meta in 2023, May 2023. And since then, what I've been doing is I've actually been trying to figure out what my next step is. And so one of the big things that I've been starting to explore more is I started learning software engineering. I've learned full stack. I joined a boot camp at the beginning of this year and completed through it. And then I've been starting to kind of figure out how I can continue that going forward. And that'll be part of the continuation of other questions and such. But that's kind of where I'm at right now and trying to figure out the next step for myself.
Hey, can everyone hear me? Okay. Yeah, I'm Erika. Erika from America is how you can remember me. I have 10 years of marketing analytics experience. So I started off in my career doing selling Christmas trees, actually. Yeah, we did search engine marketing for a Christmas tree company called Balsam Brands. And then after a year, I moved to Salesforce, where I did website analytics, and I was introduced to data science. There's a data science manager on our team, fell in love with data science, did a data science project with Google, and then I turned around and joined that Google data science team. Yeah, so done marketing analytics for 10 years, and then I got laid off, or I graduated January 2024. And then I decided to start my own business. So I initially was thinking about becoming a therapist, actually, on one of my medical leaves. I was just brainstorming what was the life that I want to build, because at Google, I was actually a little bit miserable and I felt trapped in golden handcuffs, which we'll talk about later. And then I explored becoming a therapist. That opened up my horizons, and I fell into becoming a financial coach.
Hi, everyone. I'm Monisha Perkash. I've been a serial entrepreneur most of my career. I co-founded an ed tech business focused on college financing, and then a digital health company using wearables for things like posture and gait. I joined Meta. They recruited me to help with some big bets launching new products, including the Meta Ray-Ban smart glasses. I led the launch of that. And I left a couple of years ago. I wasn't really feeling a sense of purpose there. And I just kind of gave myself permission to chase joy. I didn't really know what I wanted to do next. And for me, chasing joy meant saying yes just to the things that gave me joy without any rationale or any strategic maneuvering. And it was pretty amazing just giving myself that space. When else in my life had I ever had that? Never. And so where I've landed is I just love helping entrepreneurs, having been a former entrepreneur myself. I'm now teaching entrepreneurship courses at Stanford. I'm an advisor, an investor, board member to a variety of startups. I'm part of many startup accelerators, and I'm really loving it. So for me, I've kind of gone back to the beginning of my entrepreneurial identity.
So for me, I started my career in finance. I was doing fund administration, but on the data modeling side. Then got a job at a company that makes software that does data modeling. And then Facebook was one of my clients when I was at that company, and Facebook decided they liked working with me and I liked working with them. So I kind of made the jump. I started off on a global operations team that kind of oversaw all the regional ones on the business side. And then my job kind of ended becoming the person who fed the business's requirements to the product team that owned what was called the advertiser or the business graph. It's kind of like an internal knowledge graph. It's all the 2.5 billion users on the platform, and like, what do you do with them? Are you a good actor? Do I sell to you? Are you a bad actor? Do I ban you? And then eventually became me trying to clean up after the 2016 election kerfuffle with Congress. How do I make sure we identify all the political entities on the platform and make sure everybody treats them fairly? So I sat between like 12 different teams, eventually becoming the PM for that graph, becoming the guy who helped categorize everything and make sure all these teams could have their requirements met. So I also spent a lot of time talking to the FTC and the DOJ's lawyers, answering all the audits and making sure that Facebook stayed coloring within the lines that the government set. So my head also rolled in the May 2023 layoffs. It was a surprise. Everyone's like, not you, you're like the one guy who knows how this works. I was like, all right, cool. And then dead. So that was pretty crazy. And I basically immediately sprung into action. I put my resume out there. I emailed the CEO of a company that I knew. I was like, you have a startup, like, do you know anyone who needs my skills? And he says, hop in this call with me. It's him, it's co-founder. He looks at his co-founder and says, Derek wants to join our company. I was like, that's not what I said at all. But, he was right. He has this kind of gift of foresight, I guess. And, here I am now. So it's been a wild ride. I feel like it's getting louder. It's been a wild ride. I went through periods of not getting paid at all for quite a long time. The severance, kept me afloat. So the startup roller coaster is real, but the trajectory seems to be up. So, I can answer questions about that. But it's been like the craziest decision of my life probably to do this. And I'm in the middle of it now. We're just wrapping up our seed round and getting a product out hopefully in the next 4 weeks. So yeah.
That's great. There's so many themes that you all share, and one is entrepreneurship or being asked to join a startup. Would love to kind of talk about the challenges and sort of how does that fit with your value system, like Erika, in making a decision to become an entrepreneur and start your own company. Yeah, sure, yeah.
So your question was,
well, I know I didn't really ask a good question. The question is like, what kind of urged you to really ask yourself the question to become an entrepreneur, and how did that align with your values? So it's two questions.
Okay.
It's the why, really.
The why, yeah. So when I was at Google, I think my value system was really aligned to prestige and following prestige. Prestige is something that a value that I got from my dad, who really values prestige too. And while I was there, I noticed that I started to pivot that value, and actually my value shifted to contribution. And so that's why I decided that I want to like help people in some way. And financial coaching was how I wanted to do that. I was like super passionate about personal finance. I was the one who was always talking about financial independence, retire early. And I just wanted to help people in that journey. So kind of like the value shift. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I know, Monisha, with your ed tech company and financial literacy.
Yeah, yeah. You know, what you were saying, Erica, really resonates with me. What I realized after I left Meta is so much of my wiring had been about external validation. And so that's probably related to the prestige. And so much of our lives has been that, right? Like it's probably what causes us to be the high achievers that we are. It's that external validation. And for me, the past couple of years has been this journey of trying to shed that need for external validation. I remember when I left Meta and I didn't really have my next thing lined up, it was like, oh my God, what is my LinkedIn gonna say? Right? and just observing that in myself and just being embarrassed that that was such a, you know, a calamity for me, right? And so I'm not fully there yet, but I definitely am much further along on not needing that external validation and really looking inside myself of like, do I validate me? Do I really value what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, who I'm doing it with, the company that I'm keeping? Is this the life that I want to live? And I can say that so much more like yes than I could when I was at Meta.
Okay, everyone's looking at me. So yeah, I mean that all resonates as well with me. Like there's a it's funny, there's a sweet spot between doing something for other people and doing something for yourself. You know, I find like the times when I feel the most fulfilled are when I'm doing something that's both, right? Something that helps other people, but I also enjoy doing myself, and I can find that internal connection with my own center in that. Because you know, you go too far the doing for yourself direction, you end up like a narcissist, right? Or and like there is a part of us, we're individual creatures and we're also social creatures, and it matters how others perceive us. It really does. Like biologically, evolutionarily, like our reward systems are like set up that way. But at the same time, you can't be always sacrificing yourself, right? And it's really tough to find that balance. And you know, for me, it was more interest and passion driven. At a point, I think through year 5, I was like, I want to do a startup. I have no idea what it is. I'm going to take a microdose of LSD, go on a hike, and I'm going to come back with a genius idea, because that's how these stories always go. And so I go on the hike, and it's beautiful. It's in Marin. It's gorgeous. And I come back with nothing. I have jack shit to show for it. And I'm a little upset. And, you know, I guess depending on how like woo spiritual you want to get, right? I guess, you know, the layoff was kind of like that kick in the butt off the cliff to go find the thing. And like, for me, it was always, I always want to do something that was sort of unequivocally good. And Meta for me was often in a gray area. It was amazing in a lot of things, a great economic engine. It was also, you know, not so good in some other areas. And like, that's a lot of what we dealt with. Like Cambridge Analytica was a good one too. So, so landing in for me for cybersecurity felt like that, even though if at the time it was, you know, like a terrifying free fall. So.
And it's sort of to add to this, I know I'm looking at John, not that I'm going to, you're like, ah, I'm not going to, you know, ask the question, but we had talked about this as far as our identities connected to a company culture. And then, you know, and really not to bring up like a negative topic, but sort of Derek, we talked, you know, the dark side of what happens when you are at a company and there is a layoff or, you know, a downsizing, and the reality of, you know, that, and you're a good performer, right? And then you're faced with getting laid off when you were a top performer. And I think, you know, and many of us have been there. And I think this is a forum where we can be open and candid about, well, what about, you know, what happens when you're faced with that? And I know, John, you've been super resilient, you know, from your very beginning of being in education and then project management, But, how did you face sort of being really top of your game and then getting the news that you had to move on?
Yeah, it's tough. I'll say, even to this day, it's been 2 years since that happened. And for those of you who don't know, Eric and I are married, so we did want to mention that. That's actually something that even to this day, right now, like I'm dealing with right now, is this whole concept of, I was doing a lot of great work. All of the for Meta, we have our performance reviews. It's a crazy process. We do it twice a year, or at least at the time, if I remember correctly, it was like this twice a year thing. It took like 3 months every year. Is this insane thing? But like I had always gotten really positive reviews, and then in general in my life, I've always kind of had this external validation from other people saying like, you're a great worker, you're doing a great job, you understand things really well, you're really smart, all this kind of stuff constantly. And then you get hit by the layoff, right? You get that email in the morning, you think, hey, I'm probably going to be safe because I'm one of the only guys who knows what's going on with this specific thing that we do. And then you see that, and then you're like, oh, what do I do now, right? Like what is all this stuff that I've been fed all my life to understand about who I am, what I am, and what I do. And so I think the struggle that I think I deal with a lot when trying to figure out the next steps and stuff is fighting against that inner demon that we all deal with, I think, in this space, especially with like that imposter syndrome. And I think particularly for me, given that I didn't even start off wanting to be in tech at all, I never thought I never dreamed that I'd even be working for these kinds of companies in the first place. I thought I was just going to be working as a school teacher, maybe a librarian, something, because I was a history major in college. So like I was nowhere near tech in any way, shape, or form. So these days, a lot of the things that I deal with right now is like, were all these years of what I've been doing just fake? Is everything I've been doing all my life kind of a lie kind of sense? And so that's one of the things that I think as I struggle against it, as I fight against it, one of the key pieces that I think you guys as entrepreneurial spirits and stuff recognizes that the most important thing that I've been finding is that I just need to take a step forward, even the smallest of steps. And that's all it has to be. And by doing that small step one at a time, piece by piece, that will propel you and get you to a new stage. Because if you never take a step, you're never going to get anywhere. And that actually reminds me a lot of what my mom had told me back in the day when we were younger, growing up, is that like, when you're a child, and I'm sure all the parents who are parents here know, is you're trying to get your kid to do something and they don't want to do it. They refuse to do all these things. But then I know what my mom used to tell us, me and all my siblings, is like, just do one thing, just do a little bit. You spent 30 minutes arguing and crying with me, not wanting to do your work. Just do half a problem first. Just do that. And then take it a step forward, because that's what lets you actually be able to move forward and not get caught up in your brain and in your money.
What did that look like for you? Like when you're feeling that paralysis, what was that one step that you took?
So right now, well, actually, so for this year, what that was starting the boot camp. I was actually very paralyzed about the decision about whether I should start a boot camp or not for software engineering, because I'm mid-career, I have a lot of skills and experience in project management, program management, but should I be doing a boot camp? We're currently both not working in a corporate tech job here in the Bay Area. We've got mortgages to pay. We've got bills to pay. It's kind of expensive. And everything I'm reading online about boot camps is that they're terrible wastes of money and they're all just predatory these days. So it was a big step, right? It was like, is this really the right choice? Is this really the right decision? But then Erika really encouraged me to say, just do it. We have the money, we have the time, just take a step. If you don't like it in 2 weeks, just drop it. There's no commitment to do it at all. Yeah. So I think for me this year, one of those small steps was starting that boot camp.
Yeah, I like that. You just do something. And I'm hearing from each one of you this theme of, you're going through these professional transformations. And we're talking about, well, how are we transforming as a person, right? I'd love to just kind of throw it out there as, it's a little deep, right? But, it's kind of clicking down of, it's not, our professional lives isn't the only part of our lives. I think it's really encouraging for us to talk about how has it changed us personally? Because personal change also fuels our professional journey, right? Any thoughts? Yeah.
I was like raising my hand. Yeah, when I was at Google, I had some depression symptoms I was going through. And so it was a really hard time for me. And I felt trapped by golden handcuffs. I felt like, this is not the life I want to live. I kept thinking that, but I'm like, oh, well, what is the life that I want to build? And I think having been laid off and also, so I have a bipolar disorder. And so I went through my third bipolar manic episode, and that situation was transformative for me. I went from surviving Erika to thriving Erika is what I like to call it, because for me, like that third manic episode was kind of like a clarity for me of like what matters in life and what truly matters. So I think going from surviving Erika to thriving Erika is what I felt.
Sorry, I'm just going to step in there. Seeing the transformation in Erika is a really big thing, because when she was working at Google, it was always this very like, life sucks. Everything's terrible. Why am I doing this job? I hate data science, all this kind of stuff. But ever since she started this process of transforming, starting the company, her energy, her desire in building this thing and being able to commit to supporting people in this way has been really, really amazing. We actually just came back. We just came from a trip in Portugal because there was a big fire community event that was happening out there. So we actually got to meet a lot of the people that she's been doing programs with in the last year. And so just being able to see her thriving in this space, as she was just mentioning, her thriving Erika mode, is it really has been a thing. And then like one of the simplest things is that it's only been a year. It's not even been a full year since she's really started this journey. And already there's been so many transformations.
Yeah, I mean, I really relate to that as well. And the golden handcuffs are real. And you start to make all these compromises. I did in terms of what I cared about, my values. And I just remember, not liking myself, and who I was becoming. I felt like I was a lot more cynical, a lot more just like giving up about the world and how beautiful it can be and beautiful people come. And it starts to sound cheesy, but since leaving, the transformation I've gone through is I'm just so much more joyful. My friends see it, my kids see it, my husband sees it. I just completed my very first triathlon. Right? Like we were talking about that, right? Like it's not something I would have done before. It's the lightness I feel of like, I can go do anything after, not feeling like shackled by the golden handcuffs. It's crazy the trade-offs that we make.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, for me, it started the first or second day after the layoffs. I actually went on a walk around San Francisco, and I was like, I've never done this. during the work week, you know what I mean? I'm like, this is a really beautiful place.
All these people out there, what are they doing? Why don't they have jobs?
Right. Yeah, like what it used to be, I'd be like walking off, I see someone running, I'm like, how are you? So like finding that freedom, and like now, my commute is just to my office around the hall, and I work from home, and finding that balance when I have full control of my own schedule, right? Like what feeds me as a human, and then also then progresses like my career, my job, right? And figuring out how I like to do that, you know what I mean? Has been absolutely life-changing for me. I hated being on someone else's schedule, and the commute we were talking about earlier, I was taking the shuttle down every day from San Francisco to Menlo Park, call it 3 to 4 hours or 3 to 5 hours, depending, like of shuttling a day. And it sucked. It was life draining, and you don't really notice at the time because you're just running off of like stress hormones. Like you're just in it, you know what I mean? So finding that space to allow the rest of me to like come out and grow and like shed the pieces of armor that I had built up, like necessarily, but were no longer necessary, was really important. Got into a lot of like self-care stuff, like yoga, meditation, like more than ever before. Stopped drinking, like all the things, just went like off that deep end. I was like, I want to be healthy, and it's paid dividends, like in everything. And it's not only in my personal life, but professionally as well. I think clearer, I can communicate more clearly. Everything has become like much more aligned and and easy and in fact enjoyable to do. So it's kind of like, I don't know, it's like a cheat code for life. I wish someone told me sooner. But yeah, that's really where the biggest change for me was having that control over the schedule and figuring out like internally, what do I really want to do at this time right now?
I love that. We somehow are forced into finding agency for ourselves and then thriving from that. And I mean, you're all talking about, coming from, there's ups and downs, and we're falling in and out of balance constantly. I would love to learn more about like what inspires you, like, and who inspires you. Because I know we have to be internally motivated, but I think for many of us, there's just that something. I mean, you find inspiration in yoga, doing triathlons, but what other people in your lives? You talked about your mom, but what other people you probably inspire each other, I would imagine. But is there any one or two people that, and it could be anything, like that you really think about as you're going through your journey?
I'm going to be a stereotypical tech bro, so pardon me. When I first started listening to certain guests on Joe Rogan's podcast, I really enjoyed that. He, as far as I could tell, generally speaking, is very much about self-improvement. I adopted a lot of those things. And then before he got too political for my taste, I found a lot of Jordan Peterson. I know he's controversial, but he has a lot of talks about developing oneself and pulling from the most ancient stories in our time, those having to be religious stories, actually, and the common threads amongst them all having to do with, well, what are we really doing here, right? What are you as a person doing here on the planet? And what are you up against? Why are you being challenged constantly, right? How do you deal with that? And these stories that persist through time that are almost more true than your regular day-to-day because they're true across, 1,000 years ago to today to will be true in 1,000 years from now, right? That these concepts and themes really helped me realize what was happening in my life and helped me want to reach that next level and to even come to grips with the fact that there is an up that you can aim at, right? In a society that tends to be full of a lot of malaise and struggle and saying like, oh, there's no such thing as good anymore, what I mean, good, evil, it's all subjective, and you're like, oh, I don't know, man, like look over there. And so like finding what my up was and coming to terms with that was the biggest thing for me.
I'd say who's been inspiring me the most lately, my students. It's interesting, by being a teacher, I get to be a student again. It feels so selfish, right? In a good way, right? I get to learn from some of the brightest, most creative, ambitious minds. One of the classes I teach, it's on ecopreneurship. I launched it because I wanted to find a way that I could contribute to fighting the climate crisis. And I was like, well, I don't have a lot of subject matter expertise on climate, but I do know a lot about entrepreneurship. I know a lot about teaching. And so some other lecturers and I put this class together. And the last assignment was for students to write a paper about what are some key takeaways they've had from the class? How will they apply it to their own journey, their own climate journey? What challenges do they foresee, and what lessons will they apply to themselves in trying to overcome those challenges? Getting to read their papers was like getting a window into their souls. Mm-hmm. And I just felt so humbled to be in that position of like getting to just see that perspective. And that really inspired me, getting that privilege of like knowing what made them tick and like what demons they were fighting and what big, impact they wanted to have in the world. So
yeah, that's very cool. Thanks for sharing. That's super cool. And I just want to say this. I forgot to say hello to people on video. I should have done that at the very beginning. But hello. We have so many entrepreneurs here, or people who are thinking about it, or solopreneurs, and I'd love to kind of shift the conversation to talk about what has that journey been like, and even Derek, for you, going from like a large company to a startup, and John, you've kind of been an entrepreneur by reinventing yourself over the years, and of course, both of you have you have a company and you teach entrepreneurs, right? Is there anything that resonates with you that you'd like to share about the entrepreneur journey as far as, just inspirational, like what inspired you or what do you see like sort of the challenges, but what are the really good things and the possibilities that have happened in your own journey?
Yeah, I think entrepreneurship has been a wild ride. I think one moment you're like, I'm the best, I got this. And one moment you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this. Yeah, I would say entrepreneurship, the biggest lesson that I've learned is trial and error. Because I think a lot of times we think that we have to be perfect when we launch something, we post something. But I think a lot of it is just like trial by fire and just learning and learning. Yeah, that's what it's been like for me.
Yeah, trial by fire for real. That's when you do learn like how much is imposter, right? Like, yeah, for me, it was the absolute terror and excitement of having your hand fully on the wheel. I came in as full-time employee number 3. And so, yeah, right. And then understanding like how fragile the whole thing really is. People tell you like, oh, like 90% of them fail or whatever. And like, there were times when it was like on the brink. And then you talk to people who've done it before, they're like, oh yeah, but that's all of them. You go, oh, okay. Yeah, like great. And you have a wife who is like, come on.
Yeah.
So it's been absolutely insane. And it's, like you said, extremely rewarding as it happens. And like the biggest thing for me was, trying to find that self-awareness and reflection, whether it's through myself or through other people, like through mentors, figuring out like, okay, well, where am I falling short? Like, what is the best way to communicate this, to do this? Like, how do we need to position ourselves, and being open to critique from every single angle. And being willing to work with it, even no matter how much it burns you at the time, because your ego is going to get it's going to get shit on. So, yeah.
Yeah, having done a couple of startups, near-death experiences are just the norm. You got it. Like, I don't know one startup, even the most successful ones, that didn't have near-death experiences. And it's when you figure out what you're made of and you find that grit, and you find that ability to dig out of it, and you can. The highs are very high and the lows are very low, but that sense of agency, and that, you're going to make mistakes, but they're your mistakes. You're not like dealing with somebody else's mistakes. And learning, that just the learning curve. But, being comfortable with dealing with ambiguity, but also the flip side of like creation, it's like going from nothing to something that you so passionately believe that the world needs. You just can't see the world without this thing that you want to create, like that. Gosh, I mean, when you're up at 2 a.m. in the morning, it's because you want to be, not because you have to be. Those, to me, those are all worth it.
Well, this is awesome. And we've covered a lot of ground. And I'd love to open it up for questions if you're already okay with that. Anybody have any questions? And also, if you're online, you can go onto the app and you can ask a question through the app and I'll read it out loud for everybody. But anybody have a question about any of the topics? Entrepreneurship, values, golden handcuffs. I was going to say handshakes. Like finding joy, right? Or some of the things that are more challenging, like anything. We're open for it. Okay. Any first question? Adam, did you have a question? No, I don't mean to point. I don't mean to like call on you. It's just I met you earlier. I feel like we're at a group of friends. Yeah, you guys are all friends. Like I met most of you before, so if I call on you, sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot. But yeah. Yes.
How do you move to like entrepreneurship startups? Is there anything you found to miss?
Do you want to repeat the question?
Yeah, so going from corporate to entrepreneurship, is there anything that you miss? So for me, I miss a sense of community. As a solopreneur, it can get lonely sometimes, and you're doing all the things and stuff like that. Yeah, so I really miss my Google employees, or not employees, my Google colleagues. Yeah, and I'm actually meeting up with my manager tomorrow virtually. But one thing that I've done, because it can get lonely as an entrepreneur, is I've joined Financial Coach Academy. And Financial Coach Academy is like an organization for financial coaches. So I get to be in meetings and groups with other financial coaches.
Structure and resources. So for me, the two co-founders, neither of them came from giant companies, and one, one of them is a multi-time founder, and the other one, he came from tech, but not like FANG tech. And so a lot of the things that you take for granted, like, okay, here's exactly how we deal with like this particular niche, here's the process for this, for that, like none of it, right? You have to start from complete scratch. And it was a lot to deal with, but then also like part of my value add was like, okay, I can bring that, right? I've seen how it's done, I've seen how it works. And then you have to tailor it and trim it down to fit in a small organization, obviously, because you can't do everything that a Facebook or a Google can do. But having that kind of like institutional structure in place was actually quite convenient for a lot of things, right? But the flip side of that again is like, now you can rebuild it and you can do it better if you want to. So you just have to put in the legwork. You wake up at 2 a.m. You're like, oh, it could be, that's how I do it better.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Thanks. This has been a very lively discussion. I have a question. You guys, a couple of you mentioned, especially Erika and Monisha, that you guys were not super happy at your roles. And then John, you mentioned you had some difficulties in figuring out the next step. I'm more interested on the existing resources side. Did you consider talking or working with a coach? Did you use any app? Like, what are the tools and resources that exist out there for people who are feeling stuck at what they're doing now or are not certain in the next steps? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll jump on that one first. Yeah, so there are definitely a lot of resources that are out there. I will be the first to say I'm not the best at using all of those resources myself, but they do exist. There are a lot of kind of career coaches that you can kind of ask around with, talk with. Given the Xoogler community itself, there's probably a lot of resources internally just within the space alone that you can reach out and be like, hey, I'm in the middle of a career pivot, or, I used to do this, this, and this, and I don't really want to do this anymore. What are my options? What are my things? So for me, that's kind of how I started moving into the route of doing the software engineering. There was a period where I was just like, I just had no idea. I was like, I don't want to be in HR. The only reason I was in HR was because that was the opportunity that I got at Facebook. I've never been interested in it. My project and program management skills that I developed over time, they're very good. I love them. They're really important skills that I know I've learned, but I'm also not necessarily like, I'm going to be, the next greatest project manager. I don't really know many people that way. So what I found was really helpful was starting to kind of connect with some of the career coaches that Erika would find, I would find, searching through LinkedIn. For Meta, when people got hit by the layoffs, we created like an ex-Meta kind of Facebook group. So I reached out in that group being like, hey, I got hit by the layoffs. I've been feeling really down about, my whole job search. I don't know what to do next. I'm looking for advice. I'm looking for help in the process. And a lot of people reached out to me. I think that week, or like that within that month of kind of having that conversation, I had like 30 or 40 different conversations with people, all giving different perspectives. There was like 15 or 20 career coaches that reached out to me being like, feel free to join me. I'm more than happy to like go. They did like consultation calls with me first. And then we got to just talk about like, what am I interested in? What am I thinking about? What am I considering? Or just, do you even know what you want to do? Do you even have an idea of even how to start that process? Like they like even talk you through that kind of stuff. So that's how I did it through the X Meta, which then eventually led into me deciding that, a software engineering boot camp, because I actually tried to learn Python on my own first, and I got code to work, and then I was like, I have no idea why it's working, but it does work. But then I was like, I really want to know what's going on with it. So then that's what led into the decision of, well, for all these other skills in life, you do training, you go to school, you'll do training, you'll do all these different things to learn. Why won't you do a boot camp to also learn, right? So then that's kind of what really pivoted that movement. So now that I'm done with the boot camp, it's kind of that next step of, okay, how do I now translate that great time in education into work experience, or whether it's going to be going back into corporate or finding a job like that, or maybe potentially doing like contracting work or working on the side, that kind of stuff. But I think if you're really having that struggle, I think finding a professional to help you with, or asking your community first, and then within that community, if they have resources on a professional level to get help, utilize those.
And if your question was also about while you're still at that company, how to work through things that you're very unhappy about, something that I did quite frequently when I was at Meta is I created circles. So I created a women in hardware circle. I created a PM circle. And I would only invite the people that I liked, that were like-minded, right? Like that shared my values. And it was my way of creating my little safe haven in this chaotic culture that I didn't always agree with. So find the people that you like and create your own little community.
That reminds me. So there's one, I know I wasn't in that same question directly, but what I found, having now done this for a couple of years, is it's all about who you know. Like there's nothing else gets done unless you know someone there. I'm finding out with sales, with investors, with you name it, right? With hiring people, even in our company, right? It's all about the connections that you make, and that's something that I neglected a lot when I was at Meta. Partially because of the burnout, but generally speaking, right? Our CEO, while he's non-technical and all these things, he's an extremely good network. He actually has, I think, like 35,000 connections on LinkedIn, which is 20,000 more than you're legally allowed to have. And that has gotten us into so many doors beyond my craziest imagination. So the biggest thing that I've seen work for him and for other people and for us is just putting yourself out there, making friends, making circles, and something will come up through that. It's the yoga.
Yeah, we have a quick question on the app, and then we'll get to you, Arvin. And this is really great. Chris Fong, who you may know, is asking this question, and to say this is about community, right? And so we're doing that now. That's what Key does. That's what the Xoogler community does, X Meta. But Chris, thanks for asking a question. And what does religion or spirituality play in your decisions and life changes? And then how can the rest of us find purpose in what we do? So it's two things. Your spiritual practice, how does that influence your decision or life changes? And then how can you find purpose in what you're doing? Those are deep.
Yeah, so I am Catholic, and I believe that God gives us an internal compass. And I think when you're discerning new opportunities, potential shifts, I think it's super important to be in the silence. And God speaks not in like loudness, but in whispers. So I feel like I think a lot of times we look for like external validation and like signs externally, but I think it's important to look internally and to discern that way. And I think one of the ways that I know that God is there is through peace. So when I launched my business, I felt so much peace and so much joy. So that's how I discern it.
I'm not a religious person, but I can be spiritual, very inside. There's a book that hopefully one of you can help me with. Victor Frankl, thank you. Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah.
And when I think about what I took away from that book, the question to ask isn't what is the meaning of life? The question is, how do I give meaning to my life? And I really think that's what it's about.
Yeah, I mean, like amen to both things, right? And I know I talked a little bit about that earlier, but I'm not denominational to any specific religion, but I found a lot of truth in Judeo-Christian values. I found a lot of truth in Eastern religion, Eastern wisdom. I'm a big Alan Watts fan. I don't know if you guys know him, but he used to be a priest and then he traveled all the way to Eastern Asia and he learned all about Hinduism, all about Buddhism. He became a Taoist monk, like he did everything, and he came back and he's like, by the way, they're all kind of similar, and here's what they all say. And so that's been diving into that has been extremely helpful for me. Again, finding out what actually is a universal up and in my own definition of that, and then also generally speaking, what would be of service to other people while it's also serving me has kind of been the question. And then the rest of it, I think, is it's deeply personal. You have to spend some time to get to know yourself. And I think God does speak in a very tiny, quiet voice, but just inside. And to get there, you have to find a peace. I call it, there's a subtle bliss that is surrounding us all the time. And, it took me years to finally tune into that frequency. It's like a frequency that's always there. It's always around you. And if you spend a lot of time meditating and just quietly listening, letting the thoughts go, ignoring them, and just really noticing the subtleties of life, you'll feel it there. I'm confident that, I did that with my wife not too long ago. And she came from one of the top law firms, huge ball of stress. BlackRock was driving, was her client driving her crazy. It was a whole thing. And it's been really transformative. So I do highly recommend, tapping in and being open to that. I think that's where it starts.
So in my earliest part of my career, I was a teacher. So in some ways it was going back full circle. It was more in the K-12 space. And so it was never part of the plan though. So it was really interesting. When I had my startup, a case study had been written about my startup. And when it would be taught in the classroom, I would be invited to be a guest speaker. And so because I had gone a number of times into the classroom as a guest speaker, one of the professors said, hey, we have an opening in this class. Would you like to come teach it, not full-time, but as a regular, instructor, not just a guest. And so I said yes. And again, it was just a chasing joy decision. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to do this for a long time, but just found that I love it. It just brings me a level of joy that I just can't even explain.
Mm-hmm.
Say that. Yeah, I think this question actually was very interesting. Actually, my name is Zoe, and I just graduated from the Master of Spirituality and Mind Body at Columbia, and I'm so amazed. And then right now, I'm a life coach actually for founders and executives. So I'm amazed by how so much synchronicity just happens in this room. And my question is that, by the way, my background is I also was ex-bar dancer. So I was working at my dance before, and 2 years ago I quit and started my own enterprise too. But I realized something that is, even if you left enterprise, your pattern didn't change too much. I mean, subconsciously. For example, you tend to still do things quickly. You tend to still strive to get things done. So I wonder how you think about that. Do you really that you fundamentally change your pattern, or you're still in the process? an internal pattern?
I haven't started a business myself though. But at least on that process, I would say I think that is a process in changing still. That is actually something that we talk about with Erika's business that she's running right now, that there's kind of this pressure of feeling like, oh, we need to make it be profitable, or we need it to be successful by a certain XYZ date or a certain time and whatever. But like, one of the things that I know I remind her about is, we haven't even hit a year of you running your business yet. You haven't even hit that first milestone in that sense of like a timeline of even having a business running for operationally for an entire year. And I think that's a way of kind of like reminding ourselves to give us the time, give us the space. Obviously, for myself, I feel like I need to give myself that same advice for my job searching or like for my process of figuring out this coding and stuff too, because there are a lot of opportunities for myself as well. And I'm in that middle of that transition too. There's a sense a lot of the times I feel like I have to be ready for that next step already. It's the feeling I put pressure on myself is like, it's been 2 years. I need to be moving on. It needs to be the next thing. It's been so long, but realizing that it might be a part of that process, that it needs to have that time, and that in a sense we have the blessing that we have the opportunity to take time. We're not rushed in the sense that we have to find a job right away. We have, or like be forced to move or forced to be evicted or anything like that. We have a lot of these blessings of the opportunity of actually taking this time in silence, kind of going back to that religious and spirituality question of allowing ourselves to actually take a pause, especially being in the Bay Area and being in tech, where everything has been so just go, go, go. We've got to get to the next progress. We've got to, hit the next numbers. We built something and we're already moving on to the next 5 products. And we, completely, drop that previous product that we just developed, right? That sense of constantly moving, where actually there's time to have a pause, and that allows you to actually really think about what is the right next step for ourselves in that space.
Yeah, building on that, there's a poster at Facebook. It was like a little rocking horse, and it said, "Don't mistake motion for progress." And yeah, it's a great one. Like that said, I think moving fast is a skill. I think it's highly adaptive in the environment that we're in. I think you need to be able to do that, but you also need to be able to consciously slow down and choose when you do that and when you don't do that. And the way, I think of it, it's like a balancing act, right? Like you have, oh my God, I can move so fast, but to balance it out, you don't reduce how fast you can go, right? You get better at slowing down, and now you're balanced. So.
Hi, I have a few questions from Zoom. Let me start with the first one. One of the things I miss about Google was the built-in community. How have you developed and found community in the startup world?
So in addition to my co-lecturers that, we've become very good friends, I'm a part of many different accelerators. And so there's inherent community there, both among the founders, but also the mentors. So for me, I feel like the startup world is just inherent in it is community, because people are so open to seeking help and giving help, and that inherently creates community.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Like for me, the founding team became my community, like a second family now, and we bicker like one, two sometimes. But it's, I had my friends at Facebook, but I was never one to be friends with like a ton of people, and everybody. I was just too busy to really make those connections. I preferred a few deep connections to many, less deep connections. And so for me, finding people who are just as passionate, who are putting everything on the line to move that forward, right? That natural connection, the fact that we spend every day with each other all the time has created that bond. So that's for me where I found that I like having a smaller number of people, and it just naturally came.
Okay, I'll ask the next question. Thank you so much for those answers. For the next question, I've noticed in startup land, there's a lot of criticism from how you run your business to the idea itself, from those around you. How do you A, respond, and B, reflect and deflect and move on?
First, you develop a thick skin, because if what you're doing is obviously so great, everybody would be doing it, right? It takes the contrarian, it takes the non-consensus view to see something that others don't see. So it means people are going to constantly tell you why you're going to fail, or yours is a stupid idea, or whatever. At the same time, you do listen, for feedback, insights. Maybe there's something you missed. So you don't want to be so arrogant and that you put on, these, blindfolds, or you become blinders. Thank you. So it is a balancing act, but yeah, entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. You have to have a thick skin. You have to have a lot of conviction.
Yeah, everything she said. It's like it is a lot, like I said earlier, like what ego you thought you had will get crushed and you'll get remade several times over in the fire. And that's just part of it. And everything that you hear, for me at least, I start by taking it seriously, right? I don't brush it off right away unless it's something that I've already stress tested us against several times. And I know, like, no, that person's just wrong, but you still treat them with respect and all that, of course. But it really is a time to examine everything as critically as possible and make sure you really have built a sturdy foundation. For us, our company is built on the current threat that quantum computers are posing to cybersecurity, and quantum computers aren't even here yet. How the hell are they doing that? And that's a whole story I can tell later. But we do get a lot of people who are like, that's not a problem. I don't really care about that. It's like, oh yeah, okay, well, let's see. And that's that part of you that does get a little bit like deflective and defensive and is like, but like, you do need to take that seriously and come up with a good answer for it, right? Because everyone, if they're thinking that, it's really likely other people are thinking that. And if you can convince a skeptic, they become your strongest ally. So it's really, really important you take everything seriously, and you don't let it kill you. Just want to say, even though I said I do like keeping my circle small, like if you have questions, like add me on LinkedIn, ask me afterward. I'm not. I am happy to help. That is one thing that you were mentioning earlier that I found actually a lot of joy in, is if there are other people, or if I can offer any assistance, I love to do that. So